now Citrus County's top political podcast.
At some point you look around, and you're the only one.
It's pretty good.
And just like that, the perspective shifts.
Paging Bobby Winsler to the microphone. On in 3, 2.
Welcome in! Coming to you from the Concurrent Media Network in the heart of Citrus County. However you're making us part of your day, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, Concurrent website, or Concurrent mobile app, we're sure glad you're joining us. Today's show is brought to you by the Concurrent, your newest outlet for Citrus County opinion-based news. Check out the Concurrent. Read, listen, watch, discuss at theconcurrent.com. Welcome to the conversation, sponsored by, well, us. So, no commission meeting today. We got 2 for the price of 1 last Tuesday. We'll talk about both of those. There was a week's worth of meetings in Crystal River, known as the charrette, that culminated in a final presentation on Friday. I was not there, though I did attend the opening meeting as discussed last week. We'll talk about some of that today, too. Shameless plug, we have our first concurrent event this Thursday at 5:30 p.m. All are welcome. We're giving away some free shirts. We'll have some free refreshments. It'll just be a chance to meet with other readers and learn a little bit more about what all this concurrent stuff is before we officially launch on August 1st. So that is this Thursday, 1st of July at 5:30. Find out the location and more information at our website or on our Facebook page. It looks like I was wrong. I had a hot take. I'm going to give myself half credit, though. I made the prediction last week that a candidate would file in the District 4 commission race, naming John Murphy specifically. And while this didn't happen, John was featured on the front page of Sunday's opinion section with the headline that said "Citrus Strong," which is a popular campaign refrain most recently used by Pat Crippen for sheriff last cycle. The Chronicle also reshared on Sunday the link to their GoFundMe for the animal shelter, which the full title of that link is, quote, "New Animal Shelter in Citrus County, comma, organized by John Murphy," end quote. So, I was wrong. I'll admit it. No one filed. But if there was a person gearing up to make an announcement for public office, those are the steps that I would take. Okay, enough with the recap. Let's get to this for today. If something works well, you tend to rely on it heavily. The NBA playoffs are going on right now, and you can tell which players need to go to the basket with their dominant hand, usually the right, when the crunch time sets in. On campaigns this past cycle, I relied too much on direct mail. I had seen its effectiveness, particularly in 2016 when I was running Mike Prendergast's first sheriff campaign, and he had absolutely no name recognition prior to launching that effort. And then in this cycle, COVID hits, no one really knows what to do, and I fell back on what I thought would work best. I ran 8 campaigns, 4 in the primary, 4 in the general, and split the results, 4 wins, 4 losses. Not a great showing, admittedly, with that heavy reliance on direct mail. Maybe you have a go-to dish that you bring to every event, or a story that you tell in certain social settings. The problem with this is, as we all learn, eventually it won't be enough. This is somewhat of the principle of what economists would call the law of diminishing returns. You can only invest so much into a single product to continue getting the most out of it. The truth is, you need a healthy mixture of many different aspects of a strategy to maximize its effectiveness. Gerry Mulligan's column on Sunday used the Crystal River charrette as a benchmark example for what the county could be doing when it comes to planning. Here's a quote. Quote, "Out of all of this comes an amazing thing. It's called a plan." Now skipping further down. "Some members of our county commission don't want a plan because they don't want to be held accountable for not getting anything done, end quote. This last part is an incredibly cynical view of our local government, and one that I'm either too naive or too optimistic to fully accept. I've watched hours of this commission's public hearings, strategic retreats, and regular meetings, and they can be infuriating. They can be boring, but nothing this commission has done has suggested that they're unaccountable. Just last meeting, for like an hour-long discussion they had about landscaping in the Oak Park section of Sugar Mill Woods, and it all started with Commissioner Ron Kitchen apologizing to his fellow commissioners and taking full credit for pushing a state grant for the landscaping, the terms of which are on rocky grounds when the Oak Park organization changed its mind and landscape maintenance with the contractor didn't work out. The county turns out to be apparently off the hook, so are the residents, but Commissioner Kitchen was still taking accountability for the debacle. The meeting ended with a wonderful discussion among the commissioners, explaining why they had a problem with Commissioner Holly Davis's travel to Sarasota for a conference that wasn't official county business. It was a teachable moment that they were holding her accountable for. So I get why Gerry would write that the commissioners want to avoid plans to avoid accountability, because it sounds like it should be true. I get why he'd write it, but it certainly stokes the outrage of anyone who has these preconceived beliefs. I just don't see any evidence that it is true. And to the contrary, this particular commission has been the most accountable I've seen since I first started following the meetings 5 years ago. That doesn't mean he's wrong about everything, though. The county does need to make a better master plan, and it should have one that's developed independently of Citrus 2030, which is a strategic plan developed by the Chamber last year. I'm happy the Chamber is taking initiative to have started the planning process, but Gerry is right that the county needs to follow suit on their own. A plan is only one part of an overall strategy, though. Several other parts exist, and one of the main remaining parts is the execution of that plan. This is where Gerry's column starts to feel a bit inconsistent with the Chronicle's other messaging. The Chronicle on May 29th argued that the city of Inverness should change directions on their master plan of the Depot District to include a beach at Liberty Park. This beach would change the use of that area, and that term change of use is something any planner would tell you is not just a minor adjustment. It's a reversal of course done only in the most extreme cases of pivoting. To advocate for such a project isn't glorifying the productive uses of a plan, but rather ignoring one that had been in place for over a decade and that produced an amazing, albeit still unfolding, result that is the new addition to downtown Inverness. Lastly, this argument for a plan feels a bit disingenuous as the Chronicle continues to push for the animal shelter to be built as soon as possible and with whatever cost necessary, often even ridiculing commissioners who even suggest that the project needs to be completed but needs more research and time to plan to get it done right. A civic master plan is a great idea. I agree with that part of Gerry's commentary, and it was his main point. I just don't think we need to unfairly accuse our commissioners for a lack of accountability when there's plenty of evidence to the contrary, nor do we need to endow a plan with special powers, especially when it takes much more than just the planning phase to produce real results. Getting to topic 2, but first, be among the first to advertise with the Citrus County Concurrent. We offer a variety of ways to reach your next customer, including website graphics, audio reads, and even traditional print advertising. Get in early, lock in your rate, even as our audience grows. Special consideration for donation spots given to nonprofits as well. Contact advertising at theconcurrent.com for more information. That's advertising at theconcurrent.com to learn more. Let's shift to this. We apply a sliding scale of civil liberties to our life, right? You probably have some idea of what I mean by that, but let me give you some examples. It's complaining about government intervening in your personal life on Facebook. We all know that data Facebook collects is just as bad as government, because for Facebook, they use it to manipulate us for advertisers, whereas government, they're just checking for national security stuff. We complain about free speech to people who have no ability to arrest us for our opinion because of the free speech laws that they're upholding. We apply these concepts inconsistently. I don't wear a mask now unless the building I'm entering absolutely requires one. The Dolly Museum I visited a couple weeks ago, for example, because I'm fully vaccinated, and enough scientific evidence tells me my chances of transmitting the virus are lower, same with my chances of getting it and exhibiting symptoms. I did wear a mask for much longer than probably most of my fellow conservatives, because I was convinced, and still am convinced by the scientific evidence I read, that a proper face covering, it's got to be proper, did reduce the transmission of the disease. I'm in the age category that is likely to be asymptomatic while carrying it, but I live in a much older demographic. And if there was even a chance I could prevent someone from being sick by covering my face, then it was an inconvenience I was willing to put up with for a short time. However, even I would admit that wearing a mask over the last year at times felt much more like virtue signaling than it did like truly helping. Part of me instinctively felt like my default position should be one of personal liberty over concern for public safety. But that's a hard hurdle to clear. This is why I understand what Commissioner Ruthie Schleybaugh and to some extent Commissioner Holly Davis are trying to do with code enforcement, but why I have to caution against the road they are headed down. To give you some background, there are numerous sites, particularly in the Crystal Manor neighborhood of North Crystal River, where property owners are renting their land to people living in unpermitted sheds, RVs, or literally tented campsites. I haven't seen any personally, but the stories from the neighbors are just truly heartbreaking. The vast majority of the residents are trying to make significant private investments into developing the county for the better, and their lives are being made a living hell by these small but disgusting pockets of barely legal activity. About a month ago, when residents brought this to the board, Commissioner Schleybaugh had asked the county if the county could use drones to investigate potential code enforcement violations on private property. And when she was told no, she grandstanded a little bit and demanded to see the exact ordinance that said the county couldn't do it, which led the county attorney, Denise Diamond Lynn, to lean over the microphone and say, that's the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, search and seizure. And this got a little laugh from the audience and me, but I am going to come to Commissioner Schleybaug's defense here a little bit. Tuesday's meeting revealed Florida law does allow the county to fly a drone up 500 feet straight up from public property with a camera pointed toward private property, which is something I didn't know and comes close to what the commissioner was suggesting. Also, I get where she's coming from. She wants to do her part to help. The law-abiding residents are doing everything the county could possibly ask them to do. They're paying taxes. They're making investments. They are improving our area. and they are being treated unfairly by others. It's the same reason I defaulted to wearing a mask longer than most. But it's a dark road to go down. Commissioner Holly Davis suggested that the county pass an ordinance that requires vehicles to be parked in such a way that makes their tags visible from public property, because these sites tend to have 8 or 9 cars on them, and this would be a path to letting the county enter the property if one wasn't tagged properly. The proposal was met with understandably nervous laughter, as any car enthusiast, including my father-in-law, who works on passion projects on their property, would tell you this is a ludicrous idea. But Commissioner Schleybaugh later repeated Commissioner Davis's idea with her support as well. Chairman Scott Carnahan directed the discussion toward public comment on a different issue before this tag visibility issue could be discussed further. Commissioner Schleybaugh then made a proposal so outlandish that it is the reason that this had to be a topic today. She asked if the health department could declare the sites a public health crisis to allow government intervention without permits or warrants to force people into compliance who had found loopholes in the laws instead of fixing the laws themselves. I understand the need to help. I also get that when you are part of the government, it's easy to see the government as the good guy. We're the hero or the heroine, in this case, of our own narratives. I get that. But this is a dark road to go down that compromises private property rights and individual liberties. It went from drone surveillance to a manufactured health crisis in less than a month. Look, I wore my mask to church. I wore it to Home Depot. I wore it well into the month of May of this year. So I get the idea of following government mandates when you're just trying to help others. But there comes a point that the default position has to be to respect individual liberties and to find another way to address an issue, because we are 5 steps over the line here. That's all from the Bobby Winsler Show. Follow the Concurrent on social media for our latest updates, and we'll be back next Tuesday at noon. If you want to join this conversation, find us on social at the Concurrent Facebook, Twitter, or go to the Concurrent website, post on our discussion boards. Today's episode was sponsored by us. This is the Bobby Winsler Show, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and on the Concurrent website. See you next week.